Joined now by one of the most outstanding leaders we have representing the conservative cause in Washington, D.C. His name is Marco Rubio. He is the junior senator from the state of Florida. Senator Rubio, thanks very much on a very busy day for making time with us.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
What I wanted to ask you about is you laid out the basic principles for sweeping immigration reform. And this is a fascinating group. It's you and Senator Flake of Arizona and Senator Graham and Senator McCain, plus Senator Schumer and Senator Durbin. Do you expect the White House to get behind you or to undermine you on this drive?
I don't know. My hope, obviously, is that they'll allow this process to move forward and to the extent possible, try to unify Americans versus continuing to use this issue as a political wedge. But I heard somewhere today that their comments were generally positive, so that's good. I know the president will be speaking about this again tomorrow, but we'll reserve judgment. I don't have a lot of hopes, but enough that I'll take people at their word, and if they say that they want to be supportive of this, I welcome that.
Do you expect further support? Obviously, you're beginning with four widely respected and influential members of the Senate. Do you expect other strong support as immigration reform received last time from the Republican caucus?
Well, I think the first time, what we have to understand is what we've outlined so far are principles, which is basically the architecture of what a law will look like. Now the details are important, and I think what we're hearing from members already is that they support the concepts, but they want to see the specifics before they're going to have a hard opinion. And that's a very valid point. I myself recognize, for example, there's one of the things that's very important to me, and that's what they call the trigger. What's happened here in the past, unfortunately, with immigration reform is the enforcement mechanisms that were promised never happened, but the dealing with the undocumented did. And the result is these 11 million people that we have here today who are undocumented. So the way to ensure that never happens again is to ensure that we structure a law that will make sure that the enforcement mechanisms happen and are in place. And that's something that's very important to me. It's very important to a lot of people in my party, and I think what they're going to reserve judgment on is to see if the way we structure this law actually accomplishes that or not.
One of the things that I know you care about also, because we've spoken about it before and I've heard you speak about it consistently, is that when anyone who has entered this country without authorization gets legal residency and can apply for citizenship, when it comes to getting citizenship, under your principles, they would have to go to the back of the line. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the process works as follows. That you'd have to come forward if you're undocumented and undergo a background check and, pay back taxes and a fine, etc. Assuming you haven't committed any serious crimes. If you have, you'll be deported. And if you haven't, then you'll be given a legal status, a temporary status in the United States. It's almost like a probationary status. And you're going to have to remain in that status until two things happen. One, a significant period of time, not an unreasonable period of time, but a significant period of time elapses. And number two, until the enforcement mechanisms and substantial progress has been made with the enforcement mechanisms. Once those two things have happened, and they both have to happen, then what you will be allowed to do is get in line behind everyone who's applied before you and apply for a green card through the same process that anybody else in the world would be able to utilize, which means you have to get in line, you have to wait for your turn, and when your turn comes up, you have to qualify for the visa you've applied for. And, of course, if you qualify and you've waited in line, then you'll get your green card, and then 3 to 5 years after that is when you could apply for citizenship, depending on how you got your green card, whether it was through marriage or whether it was one of the other visa programs. But the key point is everyone who's done it legally and applied before you is in front of you in line, and you will not be allowed to leapfrog them under any circumstances. And that is that's the key. That's another key point that I've been driving.
And it's a very, very important one, I know, to many people. I was speaking about this today with one of my colleagues, and in the past there have been some folks who put forward the idea that before people could apply for citizenship, they would actually have to go return to their home countries. You don't visualize that as part of this this new legislation?
I just think that's very difficult to accomplish because it will discourage people from coming forward, which is one of the big problems we have is we have 11 million people. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are. We don't know why they're here. And I don't like that any more than anybody else does. I think it's not a good thing for our country. I never want to see that happen again. But we have to deal with what we have. And I think if you put a requirement like that in there, many of these folks will not come forward. And in essence, you're going to just continue to perpetuate this problem.
And certainly anyone who has been here illegally and has committed either felonies or serious misdemeanors would not be eligible for that process. Is that right?
Yeah, the principles lay that out pretty clearly, that if you've committed a serious crime in this country, especially a crime of violence, if you're identified, you'll be deported, and immediately. And that I think that's important. And as I said, I don't know anyone who opposes that.
Yeah, and then that's certainly a fortunate thing. I know that last time, and it was before you were in the United States Senate when they went through this last time, but I've spoken to Senator McCain and others about it. The immigration reform was undermined in the Senate by people like Senator Harry Reid and Democrats who tried to use this thing for political advantage. I was encouraged to see that you were there with members of the Democratic leadership like Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin. Do you have any assurance from Senator Reid that he will cooperate this time?
Well, I haven't discussed this with Senator Reid. I've read his public statements on it, which seem to indicate that he's more interested in solving the problem than he is in having a political issue. And I take people at their word. I think certainly having some of those folks that were there today is a testament to a willingness to deal with this issue in a real and responsible way. I also think the community expects that. I mean, I think that's what I don't think the American people are looking at immigration as a wedge issue for politics. I think they want to see it solved. And, people are unhappy about the fact that we have 11 million people here that are undocumented. I don't think anyone celebrates that. It's not a good thing for our country, but we have to deal with what we have, because those 11 million folks are going to be here for the rest of their lives with or without documents. And it's not good for us as a country for them to be here without documents. But we have to deal with them in a way that's responsible. And I think that as long as people are willing to accede to those principles, we can get something done. If, of course, the temptation sets in to try to outmaneuver the other side, or continue to move the goalpost to make it move this bill further to the left or what have you, to respond to voices, I think that doesn't bode well. But so far, it's only been a day into this thing, but so far so good.
So good indeed. Just very quickly, I know you have to run, Senator. I hope you agree with me that it is more important to talk to people about what is right for America than how you can gain political advantage with the Latino community.
Well, I can tell you, I'm sure there's political ramifications to this in the long term, but it's not my motivator. I don't think not necessarily that passing this bill changes the political dynamics. The Republican Party and the conservative movement has a lot of work to do to convince Americans of Hispanic descent that free enterprise and limited government is better for them and their future than big government is. And this issue may make it a little bit easier to explain that, but it's not any guarantee. I'm doing this because it's good for the country. I just don't think it's good for America to have a broken legal immigration system, no real mechanisms of enforcement, 11 million people who are undocumented who will never know who they are unless we have something in place, and no system for us to address some of the other immigration requirements that we need for the country. So I'm doing it for America.
All I can say is amen to that, and God bless you for your efforts. That's Senator Marco Rubio.